The morning sky on Capital World burned purple, like a fresh bruise. General Robert Stone stood on the execution platform, his gray military uniform dirty, but his head held high. 10,000 Imperial citizens filled the square below, their scaled faces showing no emotion. Above them, massive screens broadcast the scene to every world in the Empire, and most importantly, to Earth. The Imperial guards had bound his hands with energy cuffs that glowed bright blue against his weathered skin. Stone was 63 years old, his hair white, and his face lined with wrinkles, but his blue eyes remained sharp and defiant. He had served as Earth's military attaché to the Empire for 15 years. Now he would die because he had done his job too well. 3 days ago, he had discovered the truth. The Empire wasn't interested in peace. They were planning a surprise attack on Earth's outer colonies. Their ships were already moving into position, hidden behind the cover of routine military exercises. Stone had tried to warn Earth, but the Empire's security forces caught him before he could send the full message. The High Commander of the Empire stepped forward, his golden robes shimmering in the morning light. He stood 7 feet tall, like all his kind, with gray scales covering his face and hands. "General Robert Stone," he announced, his translator making his words understandable to humans watching across the galaxy. "You have been found guilty of espionage against the Empire. The sentence is death." Stone looked directly into the nearest camera. He knew this was his last chance to warn Earth. The Empire's guards shifted nervously. They had been ordered to stop him if he tried to reveal their plans. "My fellow humans," Stone spoke clearly, choosing his words carefully. "I die today because the Empire fears us. They fear what we can become." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Remember why I died. Remember, and be ready." The High Commander's face darkened with anger. He hadn't expected Stone to speak. Before he could give the order to cut the broadcast, Stone continued, "Humanity has been peaceful because we chose to be, not because we had to be. The Empire mistook our kindness for weakness. They will learn." Stone's voice grew stronger. "They will learn that humans are not like their other conquests. We adapt, we overcome, and when threatened, we fight with everything we have." The High Commander raised his hand, signaling the executioner. The tall Imperial warrior stepped forward, energy blade humming to life in his hands. The blade glowed bright green, hot enough to slice through any material known to the Empire. Stone didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. It was the kind of smile that made the Imperial guards take a step back. "You should have killed me 3 days ago," he said quietly. The warning got through. The High Commander's eyes widened. Stone had managed to send a message after all. "Kill him," he ordered. The energy blade swung down. Stone's last words echoed across the galaxy. "Remember why I died." The blade struck. The broadcast cut to black. On Earth, in the United Military Command Center, Admiral James Carter watched the screen go dark. His hands gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. Stone had been more than his friend. He had been his student, his protégé, and the finest officer Carter had ever commanded. "Sir," a young lieutenant spoke up, breaking the heavy silence. "We've decoded General Stone's final message. It contains the Empire's attack plans, their fleet positions, everything." Carter straightened up. When he turned to face the room full of military leaders from every nation on Earth, his eyes burned with cold fury. "The Empire thought they were being clever," he said. "They thought executing Bob would break our spirit. Instead, they just gave us exactly what we needed." "What's that, sir?" the lieutenant asked. "A reason," Carter replied. "A reason for all of humanity to unite. A reason to show the Empire why they should have feared us all along." He looked around the room. "Send the word to every nation on Earth. As of this moment, we are at war." In orbit above Earth, the first wave of warships began powering up their engines. The Empire had wanted war. Now they would have it. but not the kind of war they expected. Humanity was about to show the galaxy why you should never mistake patience for weakness. 3 days after General Stone's execution, Earth changed forever. For the first time in human history, every nation on the planet acted as one. The United Nations building in New York City was packed with leaders from every country, and the tension in the air could be cut with a knife. Admiral James Carter stood before them, his old uniform replaced with the new black and silver colors of the newly formed United Earth Defense Force. The screens behind him showed the Empire's battle plans, the same ones Stone had died to reveal. "They plan to strike our outer colonies in 6 days," Carter said, his voice firm and clear. "The Empire thinks we'll surrender after they destroy a few settlements. They're wrong. This time, we're ready for them." The Chinese president stood up first. "All our orbital defense platforms are yours to command, Admiral." "India's fleet stands ready," another leader declared. One by one, every nation pledged their military forces to a single cause. Old enemies shook hands. Ancient rivals became allies. Humanity had found something stronger than their differences, a common enemy. In orbit, Earth's scattered defense fleet was transforming. Ships from different nations, once kept separate by distrust, now flew together in newly formed battle groups. The American carriers, Russian battleships, and Chinese space destroyers trained together, learning to fight as one. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a hidden facility known as the Forge, Dr. Thomas Wright led a team of scientists from 30 different countries. They worked around the clock, finishing weapons that had been kept secret for decades. "The Empire thinks they know everything about our technology," Wright explained to Carter during a secure briefing. "They've seen our public ships, our civilian tech, but they've never seen these." He pointed to massive railgun platforms being assembled in underground hangars. "While they were perfecting energy weapons, we were building things they considered primitive. They're in for a surprise." In low Earth orbit, the first of the new weapons was already being installed. The Empire's spies watched human ships carrying what looked like mining equipment and reported back that Earth was desperately trying to fortify its defenses with civilian hardware. They didn't understand that every piece of mining equipment was actually a weapon designed to bypass Imperial shields. Carter stood in the command center of Earth's new flagship, the EDS Vengeance. The ship had been built in secret, piece by piece, by dozens of nations working together. Its hull was painted with Stone's last words, "Remember why I died." "Status report," Carter ordered. "All fleet elements are in position, sir," his executive officer reported. "The Empire's attack fleet will reach our outer colony of New Eden in 12 hours. They're expecting to find a helpless farming world." Carter nodded. "And what will they find instead?" 3 carrier groups hidden in the asteroid belt, sir. Plus the new defense platforms, all masked by our new stealth systems. They won't see us until it's too late." The Admiral smiled grimly. "Good. Send word to all ships. Operation Stone's Revenge is now active. Let's show the Empire what happens when humanity fights as one." Across Earth, in every city and town, people gathered around screens and holoprojectors. The news showed their combined fleet, thousands of ships strong, moving into battle positions. Children pointed at vessels their parents had helped build. Former enemies now stood side by side, watching humanity's first united defense force prepare for war. In his private quarters, Carter looked at an old photo of himself and Stone at the Academy. "You were right, old friend," he said quietly. "They did fear what we could become. And now they're going to find out why." The Empire's fleet approached New Eden, their sensors showing nothing but a peaceful farming colony. They had no way of knowing they were about to start a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity was done playing by the Empire's rules. It was time to show them how humans really fought. The Imperial fleet appeared above New Eden in perfect attack formation. 50 warships, their golden hulls gleaming in the light of the colony's sun, moved forward with absolute confidence. On their command ship, Admiral Rex of the Empire smiled as he looked at the farming colony below. "Primitive humans," he said to his bridge crew. "They didn't even build proper defenses. This will be over quickly." His sensor officer suddenly stood up straight, scales turning pale. "Sir, energy readings from the asteroid belt." "What?" Rex turned to the main screen just as space itself seemed to tear open. Hidden by advanced stealth systems, 3 human battle groups dropped their cloaking fields. The asteroids that had appeared empty on scans now revealed massive weapon platforms. "Impossible," Rex whispered. "Their technology isn't this advanced. They're farmers." Admiral Carter's voice boomed across all channels. "This is Admiral James Carter of the United Earth Defense Force. You are in human space. You murdered our general. Now you'll learn why that was a mistake." Before Rex could respond, the human ships opened fire. But instead of the energy weapons the Empire was prepared for, something very different emerged. Massive metal rounds, accelerated to near-light speed by electromagnetic railguns, streaked across space. The Empire's shields, designed to stop energy weapons, might as well have been paper. The kinetic rounds tore through their biggest ships like they weren't even there. Rex watched in horror as his flagship's sensors showed 3 Imperial cruisers split in half. "Impossible," he shouted again. "Their weapons are primitive. Kinetic weapons are obsolete." "No," Carter's voice came again, calm and cold. "We just let you think they were. While you were busy making bigger energy weapons, we were perfecting the art of throwing rocks really, really fast." The battle turned into a slaughter. The Imperial ships tried to return fire, their energy weapons flashing brilliantly across space. But the human ship's armor, designed specifically to reflect energy weapons, shrugged off the attacks. From his command chair on the EDS Vengeance, Carter watched the battle unfold. "Launch the drones," he ordered. Thousands of small, unmanned craft poured out of the human carriers. The Empire's crews laughed at first. The drones were tiny, barely armed. Their laughter stopped when the drones rammed into their ships at full speed, their simple metal hulls punching through Imperial armor. "Sir," Carter's tactical officer reported, "the enemy fleet is in chaos. They're trying to retreat." Carter nodded. "Let some of them go. The Empire needs to see what happens when they underestimate us." In the space of 20 minutes, the mighty Imperial fleet had been reduced to scrap. Only 10 ships managed to jump away, their hulls scared and their crews terrified. They carried with them footage of a battle that would shock the Empire to its core. On New Eden's surface, colonists came out of their shelters to watch the light show above. Children pointed at the falling debris of Imperial ships, cheering as their protectors proved that humanity was far from helpless. Admiral Rex, his flagship barely operational, watched the sensor readings in disbelief. "How?" he asked nobody in particular. "How did we not know?" The answer came in a final message from Carter. "General Stone tried to tell you. You chose not to listen. Remember this day. Remember the humans aren't like the other races you've conquered. We don't just adapt. We prepare. We plan. And when you force us to fight, we fight to win." As the remains of the Imperial fleet limped home, news of the battle spread across human space. Colonies that had lived in fear now raised their heads with pride. Imperial observers on Earth watched in shock as humans celebrated their victory not with arrogance, but with grim determination. The Empire had started this war expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant. And this was only the beginning. The Imperial governor of Blue Haven Colony stepped out of his armored transport and immediately knew something was wrong. The human mining town was too quiet. His guards raised their energy rifles, scanning the empty streets. "Where are all the miners?" he demanded. His answer came in the form of an explosion that rocked the ground. The colony's main mining drill, a massive machine taller than most buildings, suddenly powered up. But instead of digging down, it turned horizontally, its diamond-tipped drill head pointing straight at the Imperial garrison. "Impossible." the governor shouted. "These machines are locked down." Maria Evans, former intelligence officer and now leader of the colonial resistance, smiled from her hidden control room. "Nothing's impossible when you have the chief engineer's codes," she said to her team. "Fire it up." The mining drill roared to life, its massive head spinning with enough force to cut through mountains. The Imperial garrison's walls, designed to stop energy weapons and bombs, might as well have been made of paper. Within minutes, the symbol of Imperial power was reduced to rubble. Across occupied human space, similar scenes played out. On farming worlds, harvesting machines suddenly turned into weapons. On industrial planets, factory robots reprogrammed themselves overnight. The Empire had forced humans to hand over their military weapons, but they had forgotten one important fact. Humans could turn anything into a weapon. In her makeshift command center, Maria received reports from other resistance cells. "Alpha Group has taken back the spaceport on Green Valley," her communications officer reported. "Beta Team disabled the Imperial communications network on New Montana. The Empire can't coordinate their forces anymore." Maria nodded, studying the map of human colonies. Red dots showed Imperial strongholds, while green marked liberated territories. The green was spreading fast. "Send word to Admiral Carter. Phase 1 of Operation Ghost is complete. Our colonies are ready for Phase 2. The Empire's response was brutal but predictable. They sent massive warships to bombard rebellious colonies from orbit. But when their ships arrived, they found the colonies empty. The humans had vanished into vast underground tunnel networks, dug years ago by mining operations. On the desert world of Helios, an Imperial commander led his troops into a trap. They followed resistance fighters into a narrow canyon, only to have mining explosives bring tons of rock down on their heads. On the ice planet Winter's Rest, Imperial scouts froze to death when the colony's heating systems were hacked, creating targeted cold zones that humans in their specialized suits could survive. Back on Blue Haven, Maria walked through the ruins of the Imperial garrison. Her people were already salvaging useful materials, turning Imperial technology against its makers. A young resistance fighter ran up to her with a tablet. "Ma'am, message from Earth Command," he said excitedly. "Admiral Carter says Operation Ghost is working better than expected. The Empire is pulling ships from the front lines to deal with our rebellions." Maria smiled. The Empire still didn't understand. They thought if they hit hard enough, humans would break. They didn't realize that humans had been surviving hard times since they first walked out of caves. "Tell our people to keep up the pressure," she ordered. "Small strikes, quick retreats. Make them chase shadows while our real forces gather." That night, as she watched Imperial searchlights sweep uselessly across empty streets, Maria thought about General Stone. He had been her mentor in intelligence operations, teaching her that the best weapon wasn't always a gun. "You were right, sir," she whispered. "They fear what we can become. And now we're becoming their worst nightmare." The resistance spread like wildfire across human space. The Empire had expected to fight armies. Instead, they found themselves fighting farmers who turned tractors into tanks, miners who used industrial equipment as weapons, and colonists who knew every hidden cave and tunnel on their worlds. They had wanted to break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had only proved what humans had known all along. Give humans a problem, and they'll find a solution, even if that solution means turning their whole world into a weapon. Dr. Thomas Wright stood in the massive underground laboratory called the Forge, surrounded by screens showing his latest weapon tests. Behind him, a team of scientists from every nation on Earth worked on different projects, all with one goal: turning peaceful technology into tools of war. "Show me the terraforming test," he ordered. The main screen lit up with footage from an asteroid belt near Mars, a standard terraforming device designed to reshape planets for human habitation. Fired up. Instead of its usual gentle atmospheric adjustments, it released a concentrated burst that shattered a massive asteroid into pieces. "Perfect," Wright said. The Empire won't expect their shield technology to fail against weather control devices. His assistant, Dr. Lisa Reed, brought up another screen. The mining laser modifications are ready too, she reported. We've reversed the containment fields. Instead of cutting small, precise holes, they now create explosion waves that can tear apart Imperial armor. The forge had become humanity's workshop. Here, every piece of civilian technology was being turned into a weapon. Farming equipment that could control weather became tools to destroy Imperial fleets. Medical scanners were modified to detect weaknesses in enemy ships. Even simple construction robots were transformed into devastating warfare machines. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the main screen. "How are we doing, Tom?" Wright smiled. "Better than expected, Jim. The Empire's biggest weakness is their arrogance. They never bothered to defend against primitive technology because they thought we'd never use it in war." "Show me," Carter said. Wright pulled up footage from their latest test. A regular space tug, the kind used to move cargo containers, activated its modified gravity beam. Instead of gently pulling cargo, it ripped an Imperial patrol ship apart, the concentrated gravitational forces crushing the advanced vessel like a tin can. "They're so focused on energy shields and plasma weapons," Wright explained, "that they forgot about basic physics. You don't need fancy weapons when you can just pull something apart with gravity." Another screen showed construction nanites, originally designed to build space stations, eating through Imperial armor like acid. The tiny robots weren't stopped by shields because they weren't considered weapons by Imperial defense systems. "How soon can we deploy these?" Carter asked. "The first wave is ready now," Wright replied. "We've modified cargo ships to carry the terraforming weapons. The Empire's sensors will see them as normal merchant vessels until it's too late." In another part of the forge, scientists worked on what looked like ordinary communication satellites, but these had been modified to generate electromagnetic pulses that could shut down Imperial technology without harming human equipment. "There's more," Wright said, leading a group of military officers through his lab. "We've turned atmospheric processors into weapons that can create targeted storms on Imperial worlds. Their cities aren't built to handle extreme weather. They never needed to be." The officers watched as a test video showed an Imperial base being torn apart by winds strong enough to lift tanks off the ground. Another demonstration showed modified farming drones releasing chemicals that turned Imperial roads into quicksand. "Remember," Wright told his team, "every tool can be a weapon. Every peaceful technology can be turned against them. That's humanity's real strength. We don't think in terms of weapons and non-weapons. We think in terms of problems and solutions." Back in his private lab, Wright looked at an old photo of General Stone. They had worked together before the war, discussing theoretical weapons disguised as civilian technology. Stone had known this day might come. "We're ready," Wright whispered to the photo. "You gave us time to prepare, and we used it well. The Empire thought they knew what we were capable of. They're about to learn how wrong they were." Across the forge, humanity's greatest minds continued their work, turning the tools of peace into engines of war. The Empire had started this fight thinking humans were technologically inferior. They would learn that technology wasn't about how advanced your weapons were, it was about how cleverly you used what you had. The Imperial High Commander stared at the tactical display in his war room, his scaled hands shaking with rage. Red warning lights covered nearly a third of the Empire's territory. Each light represented another defeat, another world lost to the humans' unstoppable advance. "How?" he demanded of his generals. "How are they beating our best tactical computers? Their strategies make no sense." One of his advisors, an artificial intelligence expert, spoke up. "That's exactly the problem, sir. Our war computers are designed to predict logical actions. The humans, they don't fight logically." On the main screen, footage showed the latest human attack. A fleet of cargo ships had approached an Imperial fortress world, carrying what seemed to be terraforming equipment. The fortress's defenders had ignored them as harmless. Then the cargo ships had turned their terraforming devices on the planet's atmosphere, creating storms powerful enough to tear Imperial cities apart. Their attacks shouldn't work, another general said. They use mining tools as weapons. They turn weather control devices into siege engines. Our computers can't predict what they'll weaponize next because they turn everything into a weapon. Admiral Carter's fleet appeared above another Imperial world. The Empire's defenders rushed to raise their energy shields, expecting the usual railgun attack. Instead, the human ships released clouds of construction nanites that ate through Imperial armor while completely ignoring their shields. In his command chair on the EDS Vengeance, Carter watched the Imperial fleet break formation. "Send in the modified space tugs," he ordered. What looked like ordinary cargo tugs powered up their gravity beams. Instead of moving containers, they caught Imperial ships in gravitational forces strong enough to tear them apart. The Empire's mighty warships were crushed like empty cans. "Sir," Carter's tactical officer reported, "the enemy's combat systems are trying to adapt to our tactics, but every time they develop a counter, we switch to something completely different." Carter nodded. "That's because we're not following any tactical doctrine. We're making it up as we go along. Their computers can't predict chaos." Back in the Imperial war room, reports of defeat kept coming in. The human resistance on occupied worlds had somehow modified civilian power plants to create electromagnetic pulses that shut down Imperial technology. Mining colonies had turned their drilling equipment into weapons that could tear through Imperial bunkers. "We have to sue for peace," one of the older generals suggested, "before they reach our core worlds." "Never," the High Commander shouted. "They are primitives. They use outdated technology. They cannot defeat the Empire." At that moment, the tactical display lit up with new warnings. Somehow, human ships had appeared in orbit around 3 Imperial core worlds. They had modified their stealth technology, originally designed for scientific survey vessels, to completely evade Imperial sensors. Multiple human fleets detected. A sensor operator called out, "They're using different attack patterns on each world. Our defensive computers can't keep up." The High Commander watched in horror as his carefully built defenses crumbled. On one world, human ships used modified medical scanners to detect and target weak points in Imperial structures. On another, they turned simple agricultural sprayers into chemical delivery systems that dissolved Imperial armor. "Send everything we have," he ordered desperately. "Every ship, every soldier." But his generals just stared at the tactical displays. The humans weren't fighting like any enemy they had faced before. There was no logic to their attacks, no pattern their computers could analyze. Every time the Empire adapted to one human weapon, the humans would unveil something completely different. In Earth's military command center, Carter received reports of victory after victory. "Send word to all fleets," he ordered. "Begin Operation Final Strike. It's time to show the Empire why they should have listened to General Stone's warning." The Empire's mighty military machine, built on logic and predictability, was falling apart in the face of human chaos and creativity. They had started this war thinking humans were primitive. Now they were learning that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who doesn't fight the way you expect. The Imperial throne world gleamed like a jewel in space, its golden cities visible even from orbit. For 10,000 years, no enemy had ever reached this far into Imperial territory. Now the combined fleets of humanity filled the sky above it. Admiral Carter stood on the bridge of the EDS Vengeance, watching the Imperial capital through the main viewport. Behind him, the crews of 1,000 ships waited for his orders. The entire human fleet had gathered for this final battle. "Send the message," he commanded. On the planet below, in the Imperial Palace's grand throne room, the High Commander received humanity's transmission. His hand shook as he read it aloud to his gathered advisors. "This is Admiral James Carter of the United Earth Defense Force. You executed our general and planned to destroy our worlds. We gave you multiple chances to surrender. Now you have one last choice. Surrender unconditionally, or we will show you what total war really means." The High Commander looked at his generals. "We still have defenses. We can fight." One of his oldest advisors stepped forward. "Sir, look outside." Through the palace's crystal windows, they could see something happening to the sky. Thousands of human ships were deploying what looked like terraforming equipment, the same technology that had already destroyed dozens of Imperial worlds. "They wouldn't dare," the High Commander whispered. "This is the throne world." Dr. Thomas Wright's voice came over the communication channel. "Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons and kinetic strikes. But can they stop us from changing your atmosphere? From turning your streets into quicksand? From unleashing modified construction nanites that will eat through your entire city?" The throne room fell silent. Through the windows, they could see human ships positioning modified mining drills, weather control devices, and other peaceful technology that they had turned into devastating weapons. "You still don't understand, do you?" Carter's voice was cold. "We never wanted this war. We were willing to work with you, trade with you, learn from you, but you mistook our restraint for weakness." In orbit, Maria Evans' resistance ships joined the fleet, their hulls scarred from countless battles. On their screens, they could see Imperial citizens gathering in the streets, looking up at the human armada with fear. "General Stone tried to warn you," Carter continued. "He knew what would happen if you forced us to fight. Now you have a choice. Surrender or watch your capital fall to the very technology you called primitive." The High Commander looked at his tactical displays. Every weapon humanity had used throughout the war was now positioned around his planet. Mining tools that could tear through mountains, terraforming devices that could create storms strong enough to level cities, agricultural machines modified to spread compounds that could dissolve Imperial armor. The High Commander's voice cracked. "We surrender." 1 hour later, in the same courtyard where General Stone had been executed, the Empire's leaders signed the formal surrender. The document was named the Stone Accords, and its terms were simple. The Empire would withdraw from all human territories, pay reparations for the damage they had caused, and acknowledge humanity's right to self-governance. Carter stood in the exact spot where his friend had died. "You should have listened to him," he told the High Commander. "He tried to tell you what humans are capable of. We don't just adapt. We transform everything around us. Every tool can be a weapon. Every peaceful technology can become an instrument of war." As the sun set on the Imperial capital, news of the surrender spread across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, humans celebrated not with arrogance, but with quiet determination. They had not wanted this war, but they had fought it the way humans always fought, with creativity, adaptability, and the will to use everything at their disposal. In the end, the Empire's greatest mistake hadn't been executing General Stone. It had been believing that advanced technology alone made them superior. They had forgotten that the most dangerous weapon in the universe wasn't a gun or a bomb. It was the human ability to turn anything into a tool of survival.